Some of you already know me, but my name is Joanne Amon, and I am one of the career counselors with Career Services and Employer Relations. And what I want to do today is make sure that I can share with you information about how to build a strong LinkedIn profile. Okay, so let's see, I want to advance this. So really, what we will be doing today, I'm going to talk about if you have not set up a profile, talk about how you can go about doing that. And we're going to talk specifically about the sections of LinkedIn that you need to make sure you are completing. Um, so there is a place where you can add specific class projects or writing samples. We'll also talk about how you can use LinkedIn to network and even research companies and research contacts. Um, we'll talk about how important keywords are because those are what will help people when they look at your profile, they'll get an idea of your marketable skills. We'll also talk about the do's and don'ts of social media, and I'll show you how you can actually research jobs and find out what the salary ranges are for those particular jobs. So now, let's see if I can advance this. Let's go. Here we go. So what is LinkedIn? So LinkedIn is really one of the largest social networking sites for professionals to keep in touch. You can use it to search for jobs. You can use it to search different companies. You can follow different companies. So it's an essential job search tool. A lot of students say, well, if I'm not job searching right now, do I really need to be on LinkedIn? And my answer is yes, you definitely want to be on LinkedIn, and we'll talk a little bit of why you would do that. So really, this site is for subscribers to continue to grow their network, and you can share common interests with people in a particular industry or major, and it's a great way to keep up to date in terms of what's going on. It's also considered your advertisement of your experience and your interest. And for college students, you want to make sure your potential contacts know what your major is and what courses you've completed. So it really is a marketing tool for you to publicize your brand. Okay. So I want you to think about it as an interactive business card. And it's so much more than what you would see in a traditional business card in terms of a job title and contact information. Because on LinkedIn, once you set up a profile, you can basically summarize your experience. Many students will say when they first look at a LinkedIn profile, they'll say, well, isn't it just my resume? Well, yes, you are putting on, you're going to post the different jobs you've had, but there's a lot more that you can add, and we'll talk about some of those particular sections. So you can highlight maybe the courses you've already completed, and you can talk about specialized skills, and that's where keywords will be very, very important. So this is just a screenshot from the About page, in terms of LinkedIn. And I like to point out that in terms of the number of members, when I started to first do some research on LinkedIn several years ago, it said that there were approximately 440 million users. And now when I did, I ended up looking this information up recently, we are up to 660 plus million users, and it is a global platform. So what they're saying is we have members from over 200 countries and territories. So it's, as I say, it's definitely a global platform. And here is the vision statement that LinkedIn shares, and they do want to make sure that they're creating, as they say, an economic opportunity for every member Um, and their mission is to make sure people are productive and successful and connected. Um, so one thing before I go into more details, when you do set up a your LinkedIn profile and you start to use LinkedIn, if at any point you ever have a question or a problem, LinkedIn has an amazing help center. So you can click on that, you can send them an email and tell them what your concern is, and they respond very quickly. And usually, if you put in the problem and you type that in the search bar, they'll come up with the steps that you need to take to resolve whatever that issue is. So I want you to be aware of that. So let's talk about how helpful LinkedIn can be. Um, as I mentioned, sometimes students think, well, they should only use LinkedIn when they're job searching, but really you don't have to wait for that. Um, you can start to make some connections with maybe maybe alums that are studying that had studied your major and are now working in the field that you're thinking about entering. So let's say you know that you're going to be looking for an internship at some point, even prior to that semester or that summer, you could start to expand your network. And sometimes college students have an assignment from their professors where they have to conduct an informational interview. And if you haven't heard that term, informational interview is really finding somebody, an alum or a contact, who's working in a field you're interested in and you want to learn more about, and you just ask them, some basic questions. So LinkedIn is very useful, for something like that. And you could even study what somebody's career path has been after they graduated from Framingham State and see what their job titles are, what kinds of companies they've gone to. So it really is a great resource. And then you will be able to join certain groups on LinkedIn. So every college is going to have a LinkedIn page. So for Mass Bay, for Nicole, um, for our Framingham State University students, you could go to the LinkedIn page, and I will show you, what that looks like. Um, so let's say you are going to start to research companies. Maybe you have set up interviews, and you've been following a certain company, and you wanted to know a little bit more about the company, say before you go in for the interview. I would suggest that you look up the names of the people who have scheduled this interview with you, and look at their picture, find out if they're just what they look like. So when you walk through the door, or in this case, when you're doing a virtual interview, you're not surprised. You know a little bit about them. They might be an FSU alum or a Mass Bay alum. So find out what you can about those individuals that will be interviewing you. So as I mentioned, this happens to be a screenshot of the home page for the Framingham State University LinkedIn page, right? So I want to point out a few things about this page. So what you basically could do is, since we went to the home page here, and I went through my profile, what it's telling me, it tells me that, so this is my director, Dawn, and I have 26 other connections who work there. So if you were researching, say, a company, and you found out that you had 26 connections or 6 connections at that company, that would be important for you to know about. Um, so the other thing that you could do, once you go to the home page, you also could search for alums, and you would basically just click on this, and then that would take you to the next page. So it would bring you here. Now, what I specifically did, I ended up, just to make things a little simpler and to show you, what I did is I selected some keywords. So I just happened to choose some majors at Framingham State, so communication and media studies, and also communications. And by doing that, what LinkedIn has done, while I'm on the Framingham State University LinkedIn page looking for alums, it is telling me that there are 190 alums that are in these categories, and it's telling me where they live, where they work. And if you really wanted to find out more, you could advance this page to the next page, and it would say what they majored in and what their specialty area is. So if you, let's say you wanted to find out about more recent alums, what you could do is you could go right up here. Let's see if I can get my mouse to do what it's supposed to do here. Um, I need a different surface here. But basically what you want to do is you want to look up here. So let's say you wanted to find more recent alums. So you could change that year to, say, 2010 or even 2015 to find out about more recent alums and where they're working. Okay. Um, so I will say that you most likely will have a free membership, and once you do join, it's free to use forever. Um, and I would suggest for college students that you gradually work on your profile while you're in school, because you could add your courses. I wouldn't add maybe freshman English, but I definitely would add your core courses in your major. And if you have a minor, you would add those. And if you've had any leadership roles while you've been in school, if you've been a peer mentor, if you've been a treasurer or secretary or president of a club, those are the kinds of things you can also add to LinkedIn. So we talked about where you can find out where alums are working. One other important area that you could start to work on would be to ask for recommendations. Um, so it's similar to a letter of recommendation, but it's going to be briefer, and it's something that you could include on your profile. So you want to think of, if you've done internships, maybe ask your internship supervisor. Even part-time jobs, if you have a supervisor that knows you well and they would say some really good things about you, you could ask them. The thing is, you have to be connected with the person through LinkedIn for you to ask for a recommendation. So one thing I want to show you, you'll be able to go back to this link and look at this article in more detail. But this is actually tips directly from LinkedIn about how college students should really build that great profile. Um, and we'll talk about some of these, but you definitely can go back to this article and gather more information. So one thing that I always like to point out is that what you need to really think about, and it is a little bit of a challenge to try to figure out how you're going to market yourself and brand yourself, but you want to think of what we call an informative headline. And what that is right below your name, there is a section where you can fill out a section of LinkedIn, and I believe you can put 44 characters in that section, and it's your headline. So let's say you are a graduating senior majoring in biology, and you have excellent skills, lab skills, and you want to be specific. Right under your name, you could say graduating biology major with such and such skills. If you're looking for an internship, you might say marketing major seeking summer 2020 internship requiring strong social media skills, such as. So you have some flexibility in terms of what you're going to say, but it's something you have to think about. And you can change that, as your own situation changes. So the other thing you have to think about is finding an appropriate photo. And we think of it as a headshot, basically, and you want to wear what you might be wearing when you go to work. So if we go back to that biology major, maybe that person would have a lab coat, so they might be wearing their lab coat for their particular picture. Um, so I don't want to go through every point here, but I do want to mention about the summary. So Now, this is one change that LinkedIn did make in terms of their profile. It used to be called a professional summary, and now it's known as the About section. So when I include some of the links ahead of time here that you'll be able to look at, when you hear summary or you see the word summary, articles on writing a good summary, it's really about the About section. So in this particular section, you can use 2,000 characters, and what I've read is you should try to stress keywords to really promote your marketable skills. And if you want, in that section, you can set it up so that you have brief paragraphs. And because you don't want it to look like a full page of a book, it might not be as enticing for someone to read. So you definitely can style it that way. You want to use brief sentences. You don't want to use jargon. You have to make a decision if you're going to put this section in first person or third person. It really is your choice. You want to be consistent. I tend to have everything in the third person on my particular on my profile. And I think it's because I help students write resumes. And when we write resumes, we don't use I's, my's pronouns. So I'm a little more comfortable with the third person, but you don't have to do that. You want to show off your personality too in this particular section. And you just have to make sure that you always stay professional. You don't want to be controversial. And please, please make sure you proofread. I have seen many grammatical errors and problems on LinkedIn, and you just don't want to do that. You want to make a good first impression. Um, does anybody have any questions as I move along? Please feel free if you want to wave your hand, and I will definitely answer your questions. All right. So, oh, yes.
It's more just a comment that I've noticed from some of the recruiter rams is you mentioned it on the last slide, but the unique LinkedIn URL is like a really important sharing tool that I've just found as a student in like finding other students and like sharing information about myself.
Yes, I think that let's say somebody is, and we'll talk a little bit about that, about how you would be able to really customize your URL. One of the whole things with LinkedIn, LinkedIn is used by recruiters to find people. All right, so if somebody Googles your name, ideally your LinkedIn profile should come up first. Um, and they, employers do. I mean, there's no question about it. They will search any of your social media sites. So I think, especially, let's say someone has a consulting business and that business has another name. You could definitely create a URL with that. But that's a very good point, Val. I don't think people always realize that they have that, that flexibility to do that. Um, so anyways, what I do want to show you is a feature that you might want to do initially when you're setting up your LinkedIn profile, and that's to select a privacy setting. Um, so when I advance to the next slide, I'm going to show you how you would do that. But you do have some flexibility in terms of how you can set up your LinkedIn profile. And as I mentioned earlier, you want to just have a wide connection of all different types of people. You can invite friends, family members, internship contacts, classmates, um, certainly supervisors too. So let me just show you a little bit about how to navigate here in terms of this is my profile page. And one thing I'll talk a lot about is that search bar. So that's where you would enter, say, a company name if you wanted to research a little bit about that company. And then up at the top here, you'll see home, my network, jobs, messaging, notifications, and this is the section I want you to be aware of. So it says me, and there is a drop down list. So you would go to that drop down list, And I'm going to just advance for a moment. We'll come back to this. But so you would drop down, go to that drop down list, and you want to go to the privacy section. You have to scroll down a bit to get to this section on that page. But what basically happens here, this is the default setting. So when you set up your profile, this is what LinkedIn will automatically select for you. So what it's selecting here is my name, my headline, and then kind of my location, basically, where I am with my employer, and then the industry that I'm in. So I made the decision once I realized how I could do this a few years ago. I ended up selecting anonymous LinkedIn member. And what that basically means is when I look at somebody's profile, and I often will do that with a student, I'll say, oh, do you think your internship supervisor is on LinkedIn? Why don't we find out? And I'll get the name and we'll go to that person's LinkedIn profile. Well, what happens if I was in the default setting, whoever that person was that we just looked at, that person would find out that Joanna Mon from Framingham State University looked at his or her profile. And then what would happen, I would get a notification, and I'll show you where that pops up. Um, I would get a notification that, oh, internship supervisor looked at my profile to find out why this woman from Framingham State was looking at my profile. So because of my role, I've stayed in that private mode. But what I would suggest for you when you're starting to build your LinkedIn profile, and maybe you want to look at other people's profiles for kind of examples of the wording or the keywords you could go in private mode and then switch back once you know your LinkedIn profile is in good shape. So that would be something that I would suggest. All right, so let's talk about a few other features. Val had mentioned how she's noticed that sometimes students will really customize their URL. So if you once you set up your LinkedIn page and you would go over here, you would click on this and then you could personalize it and change that around. Um, the other thing that I want you to just be aware of, when you are ready to update or change information, you want to look at this little pencil icon because that's what you would go to in each section to add information. Um, so the other thing too, if you haven't started your profile yet and you say, gee, I want to add my education or I want to add other sections, this is where you would go. You could go to add profile section. There's a drop-down list. You can do that. Um, so this is the About section. That's where you can add up to 2,000 different characters in there. And then what I want to also show you is where you can add your samples of your work, basically. All right. Let's go to, I'm going to skip over this since we did discuss that. Now, this is where you could definitely customize things. You you will notice that when you set up your profile, you're going to see the little asterisk in certain sections, which means that's a required field that you have to complete with some kind of information. Um, so if I wanted to change my photo, I would click on this, and I would, if I had another headshot on my desktop, I would just include it there. All right. Um, and let me just advance because I also want to show you that you could customize something else right in this section. So this I don't know, background, I guess we'll call it, is just the default setting that LinkedIn has. So I'm not in a field where I would think of myself as being creative, let's say, but let's say you are in marketing or you are a graphic designer, you're a photographer, you own a small business, you have a logo. You could customize this. And it looks like there are some restrictions here, but I would encourage you, if you're in a creative field or you have some ideas in terms of something that's going to be professional, I would change that because it'll stand out more. Because if, as I say, I have not customized this just because of, I don't know, just the field that I'm in. All right. So Now, let's talk about, let's say you did want to include samples of your work. So if you have written an article for your newspaper, your school newspaper, if you have a blog, um, there are all sorts of things that you can add under this featured section. So it's, you can include anything that might be on your desktop. You would just go there, say you're going to add, say, an article that you've published on LinkedIn, or you have a blog, or you've designed a web page. You can add that. You can add photos, documents, presentations, and that would be important, especially in some, with some majors. So that would be something to include. Now, in my opinion, this is one of the most important sections of LinkedIn, and it's what we call the skills and endorsements. And this is where you have to do a little research to figure out, well, what type of skills do I want to add in this section? And you actually can add up to 50 skills. So, um, what LinkedIn does, it's very proactive, and it is, remember, as I mentioned, it's trying to make sure people are connected, and you're promoting your skills. So what's happening here in this particular section of my profile? What LinkedIn does, LinkedIn keeps track of how many times you'll be endorsed for certain skills, and it takes the top 3 skills and places them in this section so that if somebody was looking at your profile, these are the skills that will stand out. The other thing that you'll notice is that in my particular section here, so it says that for career counseling, I have been endorsed by 5 of my colleagues at Framingham State. And then for resume writing, 4 of my colleagues, and then career development, 3 of my colleagues at Framingham State. So there are other sections that LinkedIn breaks this up into various categories. Now I'll show you some of those. So the next one is high, in this particular case, the industry knowledge. So I've worked in higher education currently. In my previous field was in outplacement, and then I just have added other things. It says people have endorsed me for these items also. And then you're going to have a section called tools and technologies. And I would really pump that up if you are involved with, say, marketing, and you could be broad and say social media, but you also could expand and be specific in terms of Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, all, all of the above. Any technology that you're familiar with. So in here, there's also a section interpersonal skills, and those are what we would call our soft skills. So if you've been complimented by your leadership skills, your problem solving skills, your flexibility, you can add things like that. And then in my, because of my field, then they have another section called other skills, and those might not fit into some of these other categories. So really start to think about what you might be adding in that section. All right. So any questions? No? All right. So,
Actually, I have a quick one.
yeah.
Um, when you're doing a lot of edits, like I remember when I first set my account up years ago, it like broadcasts every single thing you do, and there was a
Yes.
way to shut that off. I just don't remember how to do that.
Okay. Your questions are perfectly timed because at the bottom of this slide, Um, and I remember that too. It was kind of obnoxious in some ways. Don't we already get too many emails? We don't need to send to aggravate our contacts with, like, let's say I add a new skill in my skill and endorsement area. I don't have to tell 500 people that I added a new skill. So right below here where it says share with network, I believe what LinkedIn has done now, but you'd have to confirm this, when you look at your profile. I think they set it now in the off section. So if there was something big that you wanted to make sure was announced, um, a new skill or something important, then you could click on this and that would turn it on. and that's how all that information goes out. With big things like getting a new job, getting a promotion, I believe those automatically go out. But if again, if you want more information, this is why LinkedIn is so great. On your page, you could learn more about what's shared. You know. So in the education section, what I would encourage you to do, I know for Framingham State students, you can go to DegreeWorks and you can find out exactly what the name of your degree is. So I would be specific. Um, and if you have a special concentration, you're going to include that. You can put down the year you're expected to graduate. You also could add activities, honor societies, clubs that you've been involved with. If you've been an athlete, you could include that here. Now, under description, this is one place where you could add your courses. Um, I prefer it here because I think it just makes more sense when somebody's looking in your profile. If you wanted them to see which specific courses you've already completed, I would include it there. There is another section under accomplishments that I'll show you, but I just feel it makes more sense here. And you don't have to put the course number. If you decide to, you could use the course number and the name of the course. All right, so we'll go on. Remember I mentioned that you might want to ask for recommendations. All right, so this is my director, Dawn Ross, and I did, probably a few months after starting working at Framingham State, I requested a recommendation from her. So what you would have to do, you'd go to the person's profile page, and then you would look at this drop-down list where it says more. And you'll notice, there's a variety of options here, but what you're doing is you're going to request a recommendation, right? So you select that, and then a new dialog box will open up. And what's really important, LinkedIn does put like your basic wording that you could just push the button and send it to the person. But I wouldn't do that. I'd personalize it a little bit, and say something like, "Hi, Dawn. I know you've gotten to know me over the last 6 months. I would be thrilled if you would be willing to write a recommendation so that I can post it on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, Joanne." Um, so you want to start thinking about who you will be using and asking for recommendations. The other thing too, if somebody asks you to recommend them and add something, that's where you would find that option. And then there's a lot of other options there too you could take a look at. All right. So what I have here, I wanted to just find a sample student LinkedIn profile just to point out a few different things. All right. So we talked about the headline, right? So this sample just is describing this person as a social media branding specialist seeking marketing internship. I think what I would add to that is when you're looking for an internship. So is it summer 2020? Is it fall 2020? Put that information out there. And then so this person supposedly has 6 connections, and this if sometimes people will put their direct email, in terms of under the contact information, and then this person is describing a little bit about what they're doing currently. So a potential employer who might be looking for an intern would, would see a little bit more about this person. All right. So the other thing I'll point out, remember I said that with these numbers next to the top 3 skills, so this person had 6 contacts, and 5 out of the 6 recommended this person in terms of these particular skills. All right. So this is what a recommendation would look like. So this particular student asked for a recommendation from Amanda Nell, and then she did write something. And the way this will happen, you ask the person, they write up something, you'll get an email through LinkedIn, you'll review it and check, and LinkedIn will say, "Do you want to post this?" And you say yes, and then it'll show up right on your profile. Now remember I said that you could add your courses to your LinkedIn profile? A few years ago, LinkedIn changed where basically added another option of where you could add your courses, and it's in the accomplishment section. It's not that obvious, I think, when people try to look for this, but you would have to go back to add a new profile and then look for accomplishments, and then underneath accomplishments, there's awards and skills and courses. So what this person has done, they have put in the course number. So here, communication 1200, public speaking. So as long as you're consistent, if you want to put the course numbers in, certainly you can do that, but you would do that all the way through. All right, so you'll be able to come back to these links and look at other samples. So, you have an idea. I'll just touch upon this briefly. This is one of my very favorite authors, Allison Doyle from the Balanced Careers. And whenever I'm doing any kind of research, I feel like I can always find some up-to-date information about a particular topic. So this is her link to an article about basically the do's and don'ts in terms of social media. So, as I mentioned earlier, you have to have an online presence. Recruiters look and try to gather information before they invite you in for an interview. So they say sometimes you should have the same picture on your various social media sites. What she was saying here is don't get fired. Don't end up maybe going on Facebook during your internship or on, you know, you don't want to say anything bad about past employers. So you just have to be careful, especially with Twitter. Sometimes people are a little more relaxed in terms of expressing themselves. So I would definitely go back and take a look at these, at these two links for more guidance on this. The other thing, this is a good time to mention how you're going to make a decision in terms of who you're going to connect with on LinkedIn. You don't have to connect with every single person that invites you. You have to make a decision in terms of how you feel about that. To give you an example, a few weeks ago, because I also have worked for Worcester State, I I received an invitation through LinkedIn from someone who said she was a student at Worcester State. And I didn't recognize the name. I didn't think I had met with her. So I looked at her profile and she only had one contact. So I went a little further and I went into my Worcester State email and I just put in her first initial and last name, and I couldn't find her. So I decided to ignore it um, because I just didn't feel I should connect. So you have to make that decision. Have I ever connected with someone I don't know? Yes. Sometimes people in similar roles, or maybe they're very knowledgeable in the field of career services and career development. Should I connect with them? In some cases, I do, because sometimes they write really strong articles, and then it comes to my homepage, and I learn a little bit more about what's going on in my industry. So that's when it might be worthwhile. Okay. So quickly, I just want to show you one other feature here in terms of looking for jobs. All right, so you would go to that little briefcase icon. And again, I just happened to pick social media content. And then I said, okay, maybe somebody's looking in the greater Boston area. Because if you don't put in the location, it'll go all over. It'll search throughout the United States, throughout the world. So then what I did, I wanted to find out, what types of jobs or internships. So these are the things that popped up. And this was probably about 10 days ago when I happened to do this screenshot. So at that point, when I put in social media content, it said 2 days ago that this company posted this job, and LinkedIn tells me that there's one applicant. So that means somebody through LinkedIn, you can apply directly to a job through LinkedIn. So LinkedIn keeps track of that. And then down below, this next one, marketing and social media specialist, it says 2 days ago 22 applicants. So that's a big difference, but at least you have an idea of, what the competition is. Now, this was interesting. Let's say, because LinkedIn thinks that I'm applying for a social media content job. When I did this, it says that, hey, Joanne, you've got a connection at Children's Hospital. So if I really was applying, I probably would reach out to my connection and say, oh, I'm preparing to apply for a job. How do you like working at Children's Hospital? Um, and whatever, you want to share. Now, the other thing that was interesting, LinkedIn being so intuitive and matching people up, it says that for this job, the social media coordinator, that my profile would match this job. So that would be encouraging to someone who's job searching. You might prioritize that. All right. So the other thing that I want you to know, let's say you want to do some research on salaries. What you would do is you go back up to that toolbar and go to this little icon and go to the drop down list under work. And then what you can do is you can select salary. All right. And this next slide, I'll show you what it will look like. So it brings you to this section, and I just put in a finance analyst. And again, I chose the Greater Boston. Honestly, what I did first, I put in, I think it was digital marketing or digital media coordinator, and there weren't enough samples, or there weren't enough companies and individuals that posted what the salary was. So I didn't have this nice looking graph. So then I ended up going to something else. Um, and that's where I came up with the finance analyst. And what it's telling you, it's giving you kind of the range. It tells you where, the various companies that, so with Raytheon, it's saying that at Raytheon, they probably would be paying more like 58,000. But the range is broad. You want to know what the salary range is for the kinds of companies or the kinds of jobs that you'd be applying to, because when you have to have a discussion about salary, um, what are your salary expectations? You'll be knowledgeable, certainly. So I wanted you to know about that feature. Um, so there's a lot of information that you'll be able to investigate further with some of these links. Um, there's always something new to learn about LinkedIn. Even when I was getting ready to do this, I learned a few new things about, especially the salary, um, research that you can do. So lots of links here. Um, do people have any questions? No? So at any point, if you do have more questions and you want to reach out, and I want to make sure you know how to reach our office, which is careerservices@framingham.edu, and to reach me, Jay Aman at framingham.edu. And then, hello, Wendy has a question.
To interrupt you here, I just wanted to say, could Nicole maybe tell us how, I'm from Career Services, Nicole, how she heard about the presentations? And Kyle, I'm always just trying to track what vehicles did you learn that Joanne's presentation was taking place today?
So I am taking a microcomputer applications class at Mass Bay, and they're basically running a program where they're trying to recruit more like females, more Black and Latin people to take these classes, since they're usually not really populated with those. So if I take the class, I get an A, and I attend a few of these. I think, and I have to like meet with Todd Catherine. I don't know if you're familiar with Catherine Todd.
No, but this is helpful. So, but how is it, this is great that it's part of the curriculum, like you're getting credit for viewing this, but how did they just email you the list of presentations, or how did you even know that Framingham State offered it?
Yeah, so she recently reached out with the ones that were offered by Mass Bay, like the workshops. They're all online now, obviously. And then I also got the ones for FSU. So.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it.
No
Kyle,
problem.
how did you hear about this? I don't know if Kyle's not muted.
Let's see.
Oh, now it works. Okay, cool. Hi. I heard it off of the Career Services Instagram page, I think.
Perfect.
Cool.
Thank you for sharing. And I'll applaud Valerie, who takes care of all of our social media. Yay, Val. Thank you,
Yay, Val.
guys. Thanks. Sorry to interrupt, Joanne. Thank you.
That's all right. The only thing I would add is that I want to make sure you know we have other upcoming events. So you can go to this link and you'll find a list of other webinars like this, and also even employer showcases where employers are coming to our campus virtually, and you can get an idea of what the schedule will be. So please make sure you know that if you do have any questions, you can get back in touch with us. And thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.